But we all know that real Christians, real followers of Christ, never have any doubts, right? I mean, if you're a real Christian, if you're a real follower of Jesus, you don't doubt. What are you laughing about? You're doubting me, aren't you? Doubts are something that we like to think that we don't have. In fact, some of the problem in a lot of churches, certainly not in ours, but in a lot of churches, is that people will fake the idea that they never have any doubts. I mean, we have a rock-solid faith. Our convictions are based on truth, so there's no reason why we should ever doubt. I mean, we believe that God is the ultimate being in the universe, and that never falters and never shakes. We believe that the Bible, this book, this is God's Word, and we never doubt that. We believe that there's a real heaven and there's a real hell, and we believe that there's a way to get to heaven, and we call that salvation. We believe that you can have a relationship with God, and we never falter on any of those things. Right? Well, now you're thinking I'm tricking you. And I'm not. I'm not. The reality is, if you've been a Christian for any length of time and you haven't had any doubts, you are a unique individual. We all struggle with doubts from time to time. I mean, maybe you're like me and your doubts have come at seemingly weird times where you're just kind of by yourself, and all of a sudden a thought strikes you, what if it's not true? What if this whole thing about Jesus and salvation isn't real? Or maybe your doubts have come because someone has challenged you with a question that you couldn't answer. Like, if God is real and good, why is there so much suffering and pain in the world? And you tried the best you could to kind of stumble through that whole thing, and you walked away knowing that your answer was really lame, and that if you were on the other side of that answer, you wouldn't believe you either. And so doubt crept in. Or maybe somebody hit you with this. Hey, there's so many religions in the world. How can you possibly know what the right one is? And again, you try to kind of fumble your way through that whole deal, and you walked away maybe feeling fearful. Man, yeah, I don't know. Or maybe you walked away from that whole thing feeling guilty. I should know. What is wrong with me? Why don't I know the answer to that? Or maybe you walked away angry. Angry at yourself. Angry at the person who asked the question. Angry at God for being so complicated. But the reality is, somewhere along the way, you've hit doubt. It's come. You don't like to admit it. You especially don't like to admit it in church, among spiritual people. But none of us in here are all that spiritual, so it's okay. We can be honest with each other, can't we? I'll be honest with you. I've had tons of doubts for years. And if you're like me and you've been in that situation, then this series that we're stepping into, it's for you. Because what we're going to look at over the next several weeks are some of these doubts, some of these more common doubts, and how we can deal with them first in our own lives, so that we can be better able and prepared to help other folks deal with them in their lives as well. But this morning, what I want to do is kind of give you some preliminaries, kind of give you some important things that need to kind of be laid out in order for us to be able to walk through this series together. And so if you'll bear with me, I'm going to give you some more of kind of the skeletal work of where we're going over the next few weeks. And then every week that we get together, we'll put some meat on those bones, so to speak. And then by the time that we're done, I'm praying and hoping you'll feel much more equipped to be able to deal with doubt in your own life and deal with doubt that comes up from outside and to help other folks. So here we go. If you've got your notes this morning, I would urge you to take some of these things down. And again, it may not all kind of hit you at this particular setting, but maybe as you go over it later, there'll be some things that you go, okay, yeah, now I understand that, I see that. And I want to talk to you this morning, first of all, about the idea of the types of doubters. And this is something that I've discovered over the years as I've worked with different folks and, like I said, struggled with doubt in my own life. But I believe that there's two basic types of doubters. The first type of doubter, if you'd put this down, is an honest doubter. An honest doubter. An honest doubter is a doubter who is a seeker. They have doubts, but they really want to know what the truth is. An honest doubter says, yeah, I don't know, but I want to find out. I'm not only interested in finding out, I'm going to pursue finding out. I'm not just going to ask the hard questions, I'm going to pursue the answer to the hard questions. That's an honest doubter. The second type of doubter is a dishonest doubter. A dishonest doubter is a person who is content with their doubt. They're okay with it because they don't really want to believe too much about God or truth, because deep down, if there is a God, and if there is sin, and there is salvation, and there is a heaven and hell, that means I'm going to be responsible for the information that I have. And if I can doubt enough, and by bringing my doubts up to others who are supposed to know, and they trip up when I bring those doubts, that makes me feel better about where I'm at in my situation because they don't have the answer. So there probably isn't an answer, and so I'm okay. And so a dishonest doubter is content with their doubting. They're not really pursuing truth. They don't want answers to the questions that they have, really. They're okay with their doubt because there's a certain sense of comfort in ignorance. There's a certain sense that if I can just hang here in my doubt, and you don't have adequate enough answers, then I'm probably, or at least hopefully, okay. And the dishonest doubter is the person who usually is the devil's advocate kind of person, And they love to be the person, when they know you're a Christian, they love to be that person that asks you that question that makes you squirm. And they love to ask you that question because eventually they know what's either going to happen is you're going to say something really stupid or you're going to get mad. And instead of really answering the question, you're going to get all worked up and raise your voice and get upset. And they feel like they beat you. And you walk away and you feel like you failed. So as you're looking at, first of all, where you're at, you've got to ask yourself a question. Where do I fit in on these types of doubts? Am I an honest doubter? Do I really want to know? When those doubts creep in, do I just kind of push them away and go, no, I don't really want to deal with them. I don't want to, I'm just going to kind of focus on this over here and not deal with it? Or are you the kind of person that says, no, you know what? I want to know. I want to put these doubts to rest. I want answers for these things. Or are you in the other category? Are you a dishonest doubter? Are you content with your doubt? Are you maybe content because you're kind of a cynical person? Or are you content because it kind of scares you and you don't really want to delve into it very deep, and so you just kind of push it off? And so you would say, well, if I had to be honest, I'm a dishonest doubter. And that's the first thing that you've got to look at and ask yourself. Now, I want to say this too as we're going into this series. I don't want us to be burdened and bogged down with guilt because you have doubts. Because the reality is that there are benefits in doubting. There are good things that come from doubting. Doubting isn't a bad thing in and of itself. Here's the first benefit that you can put down for doubting. It can help strengthen your faith. I really believe that if you go through life, if you and I go through life and we never question our faith, then we're actually setting ourselves up for disaster somewhere along the line. Because there's going to be some personal tragedy. There's going to be some major event that takes place in your life. And if you haven't already asked some deep questions about God, you will then. And if you're not equipped, you may be setting yourself up for a huge collapse of faith. Or if you've gone through life this far as a believer, maybe you haven't been a Christian very long, but maybe you have, and somehow you have missed some of these skeptical people that have asked these questions of doubt. You will find one, and they will ask you one of those deep questions, and if you haven't already started to delve into it yourself, you may be setting yourself up to collapse in your faith, to crash in your faith. Kind of, as I was thinking about this, I was thinking about those crash dummies that they use for cars. You've seen the crash dummies. They put those things in there. The car companies, they strap those body-like dummies in there, and then they drive them into walls, and they drive other cars into them. Well, what are they doing? The car companies, they're trying to test and find out where the weakness in the structural integrity of that vehicle is. They want to find out when it hits a wall or when it hits another car hits it. They want to find out where it's going to start falling apart. When an opposing object comes into play with that vehicle, they're trying to figure out, is the person that's in that vehicle going to be hurt, and how bad are they going to be hurt? Because we want to build our car in such a way that we minimize the damage to the person in there, right? Look, here it is. If you've never tested your own faith, you're a big dummy sitting in a car waiting for the crash. And it may hurt really bad in the process. And so what you and I have got to do, we've got to be the test dummies. We've got to ask those hard questions now. Because when those struggles and those trials come, we need to know some answers before we get there. When those questions from the outside come, we better have a reason for the hope, Scripture says, that lies within us. And so when that comes, because I've already gone there, because I've already tested it, my faith is even stronger. Because when the opposing object comes, well, we've already done that. We've already tested that. And so when you doubt, it can actually be something that helps to strengthen your faith. Here's the second benefit. It can help you to defend your faith. Now, I'm not going to ask you for a raise of hands because I already know what it would be. If I said, how many of you have ever had one of those hard questions asked and you didn't have an answer? If you're honest in here this morning, almost every one of us who are a follower of Christ would raise our hand and say, yep, I've been there. Too many times. And what happens is, you'll go one of three ways with that. You'll go away from that experience where the hard question has been asked, and you'll go, wow, hope that never happens again. Or you'll go, that's a tough one. I don't know. Maybe it's not real. Maybe they're right. Or you'll go, doggone it, I'm going to find out. I ever want to get caught flat-footed like that again. I want to figure this thing out. And as you dive into it, you talk to others, you read, whatever it is, in your pursuit to find the answer, in the process, it will help you to become a better defender of your faith. We just finished the state wrestling championship was Friday and Saturday, just this past. And I came back this morning from Oahu. We had 6 medalists from Molokai this year. We had one girl made it into the finals, and she ended up taking second. And we had 2/3, a 5th, and 2/6. And so Molokai did well. We represented well. But one of the things that we do during the season is we videotape kids wrestling. And then we watch some of those matches. And the reason that we watch those matches is not so the kids can go, oh, look, that's me. Oh, that's me. No. We do it to pull it apart. They don't like it sometimes when I show the matches because I show the ones where they got beat. And you don't like to repeat failures, you know. But we do it so we can learn from those failures. Yeah. We put them on the screen and we'll go and we'll stop it. And we'll go back and we'll show it in slow motion. And we'll see right there, see that? That's what we've been talking about. That's where you keep screwing up. This, though, is the way you need to do it. And then we'll show them how to do it. With the goal being that the next time they're in that situation, they'll do it the right way. But if we never took the time to do that, then they would never become good defenders in the sport that they're doing. You and I are the same, folks. And if we don't learn about how to answer these doubts, we are lazy in our faith. Here's number 3, third benefit. It'll help you to respect and understand those who doubt. When you have your own doubts and you deal with them, you're not quite as judgmental with somebody else that has doubts and struggles because you've been there too. You're not so quick to go to a fellow Christian who comes to you and says, hey, you know, I've just been having some doubts about, and you look at him and you go, oh, what is wrong with you? I'm telling Pastor. I hope you never do that. But the reality is, hey, I've had people react almost that way to me when I've talked about some of my doubts in the past. They look at you like, well, I don't know if you're saved. Boy, you better smell your clothes, man, because it's smelling like smoke. You're pretty close to hell right now with those doubts. Folks, when we're honest and we say, you know what, I'm struggling with this doubt, and we pursue it and we ask others for help and we run into to try to find answers to these. It makes us become more sympathetic with other folks that are having similar struggles and doubts. Hey man, I've been there too. I know what you're going through. I've been there. And guess what? There are answers. And let's do this together, kind of thing. When someone from the outside who's not a follower of Christ, who doesn't have Christ in their heart, they share a doubt or a struggle, and we look at them and go, oh my goodness, you dear poor lost sinner, you. We may not say it that way, but sometimes the way we react and act, we might as well have said it that way. Instead of going, no, this isn't a bad thing. When folks have doubts, it's not a bad thing. It means they're thinking. And that's a good thing. For most of us, that's a good thing. And so when we struggle with our own doubts and we work through our own doubts, one of the benefits is that we'll become a little bit more respectful and understanding for other folks that are struggling with doubt too. What I really wanted to get to this morning that really kind of excites me is how Jesus deals with doubts. And you know, I never really gave it a whole lot of thought until I started preparing for this series. And doubt's not mentioned a whole lot in Scripture, but the place it's mentioned the most is in the Gospels. And Jesus dealt with it. And I want to show you a couple stories really quick, because these are great stories. But if you have your Bible, turn to Mark chapter 9. In Mark chapter 9, we come to a situation where Jesus had been up on this mountaintop, and he had this, what we would say, a mountaintop experience with three of his followers, Peter, James, and John. And while he's up there, we call this whole thing the transfiguration. While he's up there, the disciples see Jesus, and he's literally kind of transfigured in front of them. He's glowing and bright and all this stuff. And Moses and Elijah show up, and they're having this conversation. It's this whole amazing scene. And it was just to kind of prefigure the idea of his glorified state, and there's a whole bunch of different things in there. But that's what's happening before we get to this story. Well, as Jesus is up there with these three, the rest of the disciples are down below, and this guy brings his son to the disciples to have him healed. And the son is demon possessed, and he's a kid that when the demon is really aggravating him, the Bible says he'd throw himself on the ground, and he would go into convulsions and foam at the mouth and all kinds of crazy stuff. And so Jesus comes down off the mountain and discovers that the disciples are utterly failing trying to cast this demon out. And so Jesus steps in to intervene. And in verse 21, this is where we'll pick up the story. He asked the father of this boy, how long has this been happening to him? And he said, from childhood. It's often thrown him both in the fire and into water to destroy him. But if you can do anything, take pity on us and help us. And Jesus said to him, if you can, all things are possible to him who believes. Amen. Immediately the boy's father cried out and said, I do believe, help my unbelief. Yeah, I want to stop right there because I'm the dad. Are you the dad? I can relate to this guy. And this guy, one of the things I love about this father, he's not trying to hide it. He's not standing there kind of stoic going, well, if I say I don't believe, he might not come and heal my son. I believe, Jesus. I really do believe. He's willing to say in this moment, I do, but I don't. I got doubts. I'm struggling. Help me. Help me. He's honest enough to tell Jesus, I want to have it together as far as believing who you are and what you can do. But man, help me in my unbelief. When Jesus saw that a crowd was rapidly gathering, verse 25, he rebuked the unclean spirit, saying to it, you deaf and mute spirit, I command you, come out of him and don't enter him again. And crying out and throwing him into a terrible convulsion, it came out. And the boy became so much like a corpse that most of them said, he's dead. But Jesus took him by the hand, raised him, and he got up. Now, here's this man. His son has been tormented by this thing for years. He's heard about Jesus. He's heard probably what Jesus has said. And in his mind, he's like, man, maybe this is the one. Maybe this is the Messiah. Maybe he can heal my son. And so he gets his son and he brings him back, but Jesus isn't around. Where's your master? Where's your rabbi? I brought my son. Well, he's tied up right now, but bring him to us. We'll take care of it for you. And they can't. They utterly fail. The disciples just can't do it. Jesus finally comes down and he steps into the situation. And the man says, if you can, would you heal him? Jesus said, if you can. Hey, what do you mean if you can? All things are possible if you believe. Man, I do believe, Jesus, but I don't believe. Would you help my unbelief? And Jesus looks at this guy and says, see, that's the problem with you people. You just don't get it. I mean, I'm so tired of dealing with you guys. You know, take your kid and go home. Some of us would do, hey, grief. I've healed the deaf and the blind and raised the dead. And what's wrong with you? But he doesn't do that. He doesn't do that to this guy. Look what he does. He heals his son. Would you put this down? Jesus will bless the honest doubter. Jesus doesn't rebuke the guy. Doesn't say, look, buddy, come on. He takes him right where he's at. This is a guy that wants to believe. He's struggling to believe. He's asking for help to believe. And Jesus, without a word, but through his action, says, this is the kind of guy I can work with. Because he's at least honest enough to say, man, I'm struggling. Help me in my doubt. And without saying a word, it's like Jesus said, I can do that. And heals his son. You're an honest doubter. Let me tell you right now, Jesus is not here to rebuke you, condemn you, call you out. If you're an honest doubter, and he knows your heart, he knows your intention, he wants to bless you in the process by giving you an answer to your doubt. This is a great story, folks. And I would encourage you, go back and look at it again. The way that Jesus handles this man in his honest doubting. There's a second story, I think, that points out something very important about the way that Jesus deals with doubts. And it's back in the book of Matthew. If you go back a book to chapter 14. And again, this is one of my favorite stories. It's when Jesus on the water. It's another one of those IMAX in the heaven moments, When I go to heaven, that's one of the ones, whoever's running the video projector, hey, Peter, could you put on the one where Jesus walks on the water? I mean, would that not be cool? We're not talking special effects here. This is the real deal. He's really walking on water. But the reason I really love it is not that Jesus walks on the water alone. He calls Peter to walk in the water as well. I mean, again, it's one of those things, man, I'd love to see this. Here's Jesus walking on the water. At first, the disciples are freaking out. It's a ghost. No, it's not. I think it's Jesus. And then Peter says this in verse 28. Peter says to him, Lord, if it's you, command me to come to you on the water. All right, we'll find out if this is a ghost or not. If it's real, and I don't really understand. I don't really understand what Peter's thinking here, but if it's really you, tell me to walk. I mean, I would do it just as a joke. Sure, Peter, come on out. And then he goes down. But Jesus doesn't work that way. That's just my warped sense of humor, I guess. But hey, if it's really you, then you command me to come out and walk on the water. And Jesus said, come. You could almost hear him say, shoots, come. And this is the crazy thing. Peter got out of the boat and walked on water. It doesn't say how many steps he took. It just said that he walked on water. Now, I have a personal opinion. In order to walk, I think you got to have at least 2 steps. It didn't say just stood on water. I'm thinking at least 2 steps. That's good. In my imagination, I want to see 3 or 4. You know what I'm saying? But we don't know for sure. But he walks on water, which is amazing, even if it's 2 steps. I mean, can you imagine? You go, okay, I'm going to walk on water. Okay, Jesus. And he walks out and he goes, I'm walking on water. I'm really doing this thing. But seeing the wind, verse 30, he became frightened. And beginning to sink, he cried out, Lord, save me. And Jesus looked at him and said, drown. You don't believe who I am anyway, so go ahead and just drown. You know, the rest of you unbelieving disciples, jump in after him. I mean, come on. I've been with you guys how long? Immediately, Jesus stretched out his hand and he took hold of him. And he said to him, you have little faith. Why did you doubt? Why, Peter? Why did you doubt? When they got into the boat, the wind stopped. And those who were in the boat worshiped him, saying, you are certainly God's son. Duh. I'm Peter, except I don't think I get 2 steps. But I'm Peter. I want to believe, but I'm going under. Help! You ever feel that way? You ever feel like, man, I'm just going under with doubt here. This is down along through the journey that these disciples have been with Jesus. Do you know what has just happened just previous to this event? The feeding of the 5,000 with 5 loaves and 2 fish. You tell me that's not miraculous. Amazing. You tell me that the disciples weren't sitting back there going, how did he do that? And we've all got our own basket besides. And yet, seeing that and experiencing that, there's still some doubt going on. They've been with Jesus. They've seen all these things. And yet there's still some doubt going on. And how does Jesus deal with them? He doesn't say, die, you disbelieving doubter. He reaches out and he pulls him up. And would you put this down? What I see there is he'll deal patiently with your doubt. I'm so glad he does. Because there are times that Jesus would have every right to look at me and say, go ahead and drown, Rand. I have bailed you out and showed you so many times I'm real. What on earth are you doubting? Just drown. I'm tired of you. He doesn't do that. Amen? Amen? He patiently deals with our doubts. Because Scripture tells us He knows we're just dust. We're just a bunch of dirt balls. And He deals with us on that level. Hey, I know you're weak. I know you don't get it. I know that I'm God. And I'm so much bigger than your little puny mind can grasp. And I know you're going to struggle with doubts. And I know your faith is going to waver. But I'm going to reach out and I'm going to pull you out when you feel like you're going under in that doubt. And He patiently deals with us. And the last one that I want to share with you is probably, if you were thinking ahead, is the one you probably thought we were going to go to first. And that's Thomas. So if you'll flip over to the Gospel of John and chapter 20, Jesus has been crucified. He's risen, and His disciples have already seen Him, except for Thomas. He wasn't there when Jesus showed up the first time to reveal Himself to His disciples. And so Thomas finally shows up, and the disciples are saying, hey, He's risen. Verse 24, Thomas, one of the 12, called Didymus, was not with them when Jesus came. So the other disciples were saying to Him, hey, we've seen the Lord. But He said to them, unless I see His hands, the imprint of the nails, put my finger into the place of the nails, and put my hand into His side, I'm not going to believe. What's He saying? Hey, Thomas, you're not going to believe it. He's alive. Jesus is alive. Our master, our rabbi, He's alive. And Thomas says, I doubt that. I really doubt that, guys. Let's check your cups. What have you been drinking? Come on. Thomas says, look, I know you guys believe you saw something, obviously, but unless I can take His hand and stick my finger in the nail prints in His hand, and take my hand and put it in where they put the sword in His side, I'm not buying it. Guys, look, I don't know what you saw. I don't know what's going on with you guys, but I'm not just going to buy that you think you saw our dead rabbi that we saw crucified and then buried. I'm not going to buy it. Verse 26. After 8 days, His disciples were again inside, and Thomas was with them. Jesus came, the doors having been shut, and He stood in their midst and said, peace be with you. I love that. Because, see, the doors are shut and locked, and the disciples are in this room doing whatever, and all of a sudden, poof, there's Jesus. And of course you would say, peace be with you. Because you're freaking out at that point. I mean, come on. You're just sitting around, you're talking, and all of a sudden, oh my God! Peace be with you. Okay. I mean, doesn't that make sense? That's one of the greatest lines in Scripture. That's another one of those IMAX moments. Show me again. I want to. The look on His face is amazing. But Thomas is there. Peace be with you. And then He said to Thomas, you can see it. Here's everybody. And then Jesus turns and looks right at Thomas. He knows. He knows what Thomas has been dealing with. It's not like, oh, Jesus, we're so glad you're here. Guess what Thomas said? No, he already knows. He already knows what's going on. Hey, reach here your finger. See my hands? And reach here your hand and put it in my side. And don't be unbelieving, but believing. Again, if I'm Jesus, I'm in his face. Look! Look! Believe it now? Somebody pick him up off the floor. Jesus deals gently with Thomas. Hey, Thomas, here's my hands, here's my side. Thomas, stop unbelieving and believe. And I love it. Thomas answered and said, it's true. It's really true. You came back from the dead. That would have been good enough, wouldn't it? Look what he says. My Lord and what? Wow. Thomas really got it. This wasn't just about a dead man walking. This was about the true identity of who this guy that we've been following for the last 3 years really is. He's Lord and God. Thomas went from doubter to full-on believer right there. Right in that moment. And how does Jesus deal with it? How does Jesus bring him to that point? Well, put this down. He'll challenge us in our doubt. He challenges Thomas in that situation. Here it is. Take a look for yourself. Thomas, I want to challenge you, Thomas. Take a look. Look, Thomas, you needed to see it, and I'm going to show it to you. Look. If you're an honest doubter, be ready, because Jesus will challenge you in that doubt by saying, hey, look. Look. You want to see it? Look. And you're going to discover. And folks, there are so many exciting stories about folks that started out full-on skeptics, doubters, and said, there's no way. And as they got honest in their pursuit and they looked, they were challenged. And they went from unbelieving to believing. So, man, what I see as far as the way Jesus deals with doubts, I see a whole lot of patience. I see a whole lot of grace. I see a whole lot of love going on. Not condemnation. Not, oh man, why aren't you getting this? You're just so stupid. I should have never made you in the first place. No, we're not getting any of that stuff. We see a loving Savior dealing with us right where we're at. So that brings us to how we deal with doubters. How do we deal with doubters? People that come our way, whether they're brothers and sisters in Christ that are struggling with a doubt, or somebody on the outside who doesn't claim to be a believer, but they have doubts. How do we deal with them? Well, in the little book of Jude, which is right next to the last book of the Bible, Revelation, we find this admonition. In verse 22 of Jude, it says, have mercy on some who are doubting. Now, the interesting thing about that is Jude is writing to Christians. He's writing to believers. In his closing remarks in this little letter, it's more like a postcard. It's only 1 chapter long. He's giving some instructions on how to deal with some folks in the church. And he says this, as you see the time of the end approaching, as we get later and later in history and we get closer and closer to the return of Christ, you are going to need to know that you need to have mercy on some. who are doubting. And the word mercy there is from the original word in the Greek that means to help one afflicted or seeking aid. Help them. Sometimes that word is translated compassion. Oh, you don't want to talk to that person. They ask all those hard questions, and you don't want to deal with that, man. Just let them go. They're a doubter. They're a skeptic. Just let them go. Praise God that Jesus doesn't do that with us. And we better not do that with others. And the way that we approach others in these times, especially as we see the time of Christ coming even closer, we need to be people that deal with doubt and scoffing and skepticism with a heart of mercy. Man, Lord, what can I do to help this person in their doubt? What can I do to have compassion on this individual in their skepticism? That's one of the reasons why I believe this series is so important, folks. Because we need to be ready to lend aid and help to those who are doubting. We need to be ready to say, man, I don't have all the answers, but I've got a few, and I'd like to point you in the right direction if I could. Amen? Would you bow your heads, please, and close your eyes?